Good morning, everyone. We are live.
Just waiting for Jason to show up.
I'm here.
There you are. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the hearing. This meeting is being held electronically in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001. The procedures for the meeting are as per the town's procedural bylaw and the electronic meeting protocol during emergencies. And I confirm that all committee members are here. And I have a motion. Moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Kenneth Donald. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment agenda dated April 14, 2021, be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? All right, seeing none. Moved by Helena Renwick, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes dated February 10, 2021, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that's carried. All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public meetings to consider applications for minor variances to the zoning bylaw. The input received by agencies, public, and staff is important in order for the committee to make sound planning decisions. The procedure to be followed in these meetings will be as follows. A brief explanation of the application and any correspondence received to date will be given by staff. The applicant or the representative will be asked to provide any additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Any members of the public present will then be permitted to ask questions or provide comments. Any persons making representations are requested to first state their name and mailing address. Please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Once the hearing is concluded, the input received will be considered by the committee prior to making a decision on the applications. If you wish to be notified of a decision of the committee, you must file a written request for notification. All right. And Richard's going to start us off with 164 Camp Newport Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, before I do, I'm wondering if I may, with your permission, just introduce to the committee two new staff members to the planning team.
Absolutely. We're excited to see them.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I am excited to have them here. And I'm just wondering if both Kelsey and Adam can just turn on their videos. Thanks very much, guys. So this is Adam and Kelsey, who have joined the planning team in Huntsville. Adam is our senior planner, and he's coming to us from is it the district or county? Oxford County, I believe. And Kelsey is our planner, who's coming from the city of Cottrell Lakes. And we're excited to have them. And although Kelsey doesn't have any items on the agenda today, Adam has jumped right in, and you'll be hearing from him later today. So
well,
thanks,
welcome
guys.
To you both. Thank you. We've got tons of work ahead for you, but welcome.
That is great. And no one is more excited to have them here than me.
I'm sure.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is located at 164 Camp Newport Road. And I'm just going to share my screen so you can see some of the details. Can you see my presentation screen?
I can now, yes.
That's fantastic. So the lot is designated, waterfront in the official plan and is zoned shoreline residential 1. The applicant is proposing to construct an 83.6 meter square, 1.5 story single detached dwelling with a 40.2 meter squared detached garage. A minor variance is required to increase the primary lot coverage from 10% to 13.5% for the dwelling, increase the accessory lot coverage from 5% to 6.5% for the garage, reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 15 meters for the dwelling, reduce the required side yard setback along the southern property boundary to 1.8 meters for both the dwelling and the garage, reduce the required side yard setback along the northern property boundary for the dwelling from 6 meters to 1.9 meters, and reduce the side yard setback along the northern property line for the garage from 6 meters to 4.0 meters. The proposed new dwelling replaces an existing 1-story dwelling that was on the property and had an attached deck, both of which were considered non-complying uses given their location within the front yard and the side yard. And you can see the outline of that existing structure ghosted in on the site plan here. Portions of the deck may have been built without benefit of a building permit and without site plan approval, but the remainder of the deck and the dwelling itself were legal non-complying uses. A recent fire on the property led to the total loss of the building, and all buildings and structures have since been removed. As noted in staff's report, official plan policies respecting protection of waterfront character are applicable in this instance. These policies provide guidelines to promote development of buildings that are sited in the most appropriate areas on the lot, limited in terms of mass and coverage in relation to the size and frontage of the property, and designed in keeping with the character of the surrounding area. Generally, waterfront residential development must also provide appropriate setbacks from shoreline to allow for the provision of adequate shoreline buffers. It should be noted that this lot is highly constrained. It has an approximate area of 625 meters squared and 11.35 meters frontage on Skeleton Lake, which is a cold water lake and contains lake trout habitat. The shoreline in front of the property is considered Type 2 fish habitat, as confirmed through a fish habitat site evaluation report completed by Fry Ecological Services and dated November 2020. Policies in Part B of the official plan require that lake health and aquatic habitat within Skeleton Lake be maintained by imposing a 30-meter development setback and encouraging shoreline revegetation. The Fry Ecological Services report found that a lesser setback than the 30 meters required is possible in this case without negative impact to the fish habitat, provided that existing setbacks are not further reduced and appropriate mitigation measures are in place to protect fish habitat during construction. Notwithstanding this report's findings, and the planting proposed within the 15-meter shoreline, within 15 meters of the shoreline, no other mitigation or compensatory measures are proposed. For example, a tertiary treatment system. And the siting of the dwelling and garage themselves preclude consideration of many other appropriate options. On review of the servicing options and applicable Ontario Building Code requirements, relating to clearances between or setbacks between on-site sewage treatment facilities and nearby wells and water bodies, it was determined that the dwellings siting in proximity to Skeleton Lake would preclude appropriate on-site sewage treatment, thereby necessitating a holding tank. This is inappropriate as holding tanks are not permitted except to remedy a problem or situation on an existing developed lot that would be unsuitable for any other system. And in this instance, it's not the lot that necessitates the use of the holding tank. It's the development proposed through this application. Failure to consider all on-site constraints and official plan policies in the siting of the proposed new dwelling and the resultant reliance on a holding tank, despite the lot having sufficient depth to accommodate a more appropriate on-site sewage treatment system, bring the desirability of this requested variance into question. On the screen is a site plan with wells on neighboring properties shown and a radius drawn that illustrates the OBC required setbacks given those wells. And the applicant had a designer identify where an appropriate septic system could be built in consideration of those setbacks. And it was determined that a Waterloo biofilter septic system could be located in this area. However, it would push the building further towards the lake. This is the area that is where the proposed dwelling is located. So as you can see, the proposed dwelling location is what is forcing the consideration of the holding tank. Site photos illustrate how constrained this lot is. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and to the Skeleton Lake Association. One letter of support was received and one letter of objection. These are provided in the report as attachments 4 and 5. Building staff noted concerns with respect to the variances as they would result in the reliance of a holding tank on a holding tank, which is not justified in this instance. It should be noted that options to address constraints through examination of alternative site layouts were encouraged, both to bring the property into further compliance with the OP and to achieve suitable on-site servicing, but this was not entertained by the proponent. The applicant would not appear, stop sharing. The application would not appear to conform to the intent of the official plan, nor the zoning bylaw. Additionally, the application would not satisfy the 4 tests for a minor variance as set out in section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and therefore staff are recommending denial. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. And also I should note that Christopher Nagy, the chief building official, is in attendance if you have any questions for him regarding this matter.
Thank you very much. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there is one hand raised, so I will bring them into the meeting now. Please note that during the transition, your video panel will be momentarily interrupted. Once you've been added to the meeting, your video will appear in the committee member panel. Please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and please do confirm your name and mailing address.
Good morning, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Claudia Patnode, and I'm one of the applicants for 164 Camp Newport Road.
Do you have video?
I'm attempting to turn that on now. I apologize. It should be noted that I am out in a rural setting, and my internet connection is not the greatest.
Oh, there you are.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. I actually just wanted to take about a minute or two of your time because we do have a representative from Timberblock who will be speaking on our behalf. I simply wanted to address the committee to let you know exactly what had occurred leading us up to this point. And so, as Richard had mentioned, we experienced a devastating loss by fire of our property last summer. And I just wanted to indicate that after that fire, we committed to rebuild because that property was really our biggest investment. It was our retirement plan, essentially. It is our retirement plan. And we hired Timberblock to build a very modest model, one of their homes. And we engaged immediately with the town of Huntsville. And we engaged with town planners, Curtis and Jasmine, back at the time that we had experienced that loss. And we were asked to do a series of things in order to comply, in order to build up to the minor variance application, which we did everything that we were asked to do. Conducted a survey, had the site plan, went through the minor variance application. We had the fish habitat study conducted. We then had to have a topographic survey. Of course, as you can appreciate, everything that costs thousands and thousands in order for us to get to this point. We were encouraged by the town planners to offer this proposal, and I just wanted to note that we have made several concessions to move away from just simply rebuilding, following the grandfathering of what was there previously, just so that we could better the property and make it something that would be more appropriate, more suitable for us in our retirement, but also something that was better than what was there before in terms of some of the things that were on that very small property, as Richard has mentioned. So we felt that it was a very reasonable proposal. And of course, we were encouraged at the time by Curtis and Jasmine. And so I would like to defer to Greg Bruce, who is our representative from Timberblock. He's much more eloquent about the, everything that has to do with the building and the bylaws. So I would really appreciate if he could speak on our behalf at this point.
Okay, let's bring him in.
I have brought him in, so he should pop up in a few minutes. Greg, if you could just confirm your name and mailing address and have your microphone and video ready.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, let's start the video here. Here we go. So hello, I'm Greg Bruce. I'm a project manager with Timberblock in Ontario. Just further to what Claudia had said there, we understand that this application right now as is incomplete regarding the septic. But basically what has happened is when they came to us after the fire, we advised them, here's your next steps, here's what you need to do. So they went and they got a as-built survey completed, knowing that they can employ the grandfathering rules within the bylaw and reconstruct exactly the same that's there as long as it's safe. So that was option one. That clearly isn't what they wanted to do. So I met with Curtis and Jasmine at the town And basically they had said that 15 meters back from the water was an absolute minimum that they would support, and having to get a fish habitat study like Claudia said, and to revegetate the shoreline buffer and just have a 2 meter path down to the water on the one side. So I've represented many clients for simple applications throughout the years. Nobody's getting what they want out of this. The clients aren't getting the size that they wanted. Claudia's husband, Mike, he wanted a garage. I actually advised him that I thought the garage was a little bit of a big ask, but surprised. Actually, Curtis and Jasmine seemed supportive of it to exceed the 5%. And so we began design of a house to conform to this. Everything, even though the setbacks and everything that's required from this and what we're seeking relief from, it sounds like a lot, but everything is an improvement over what is currently there. It was before the fire. So we hadn't planned on a septic system yet for the house, but we were actually surprised that when Richard became involved in the project and he requested that we get the survey regarding the wells to verify the septic setbacks, we were actually surprised that the neighbor to the south, I don't know, Richard, if you can bring that up, but the neighbor to the south was indicated as a sand point. We were surprised by that. We were expecting that to be a drilled well because that is within 30 meters of the existing privy, which really isn't allowed. So we assumed that that was that would be a 15 meter setback from that, and we would have room to put a tertiary system in. From the very beginning, with conversations with Curtis and Jasmine, we were entertaining anything. The clients did not want a holding tank. That was a last resort. But if we knew that we should be able to fit a holding tank in, as once the house was designed and we knew what the limitations were. I don't know if you guys saw that or not.
I can put it back up if you wish.
Yeah, that would be great, please. It's an important piece of how we ended up here. Because what we do at Timberblock is we try to design a house that conforms. So we don't want to put the cart before the horse here. We wanted to find out what is being supportive. And then we would get the septic design, knowing what our limitations for that are, and then we would design a house that fits that. So on the south side, you'll see where it's very hard to see, but you'll see the neighbors, and it's indicated as a sand point well. And you'll see within the 30 meters, which really limits the proposed septic field that was put on this drawing. We weren't planning on going this close to the water. This was the only thing that fit. But you'll see in between there, there's an existing privy. And that led to a lot of the confusion because a sand point should not be allowed within 30 meters of a privy with an earth vault. So we were under the assumption when we began these discussions that we would be able to fit a tertiary system as long as the homeowners decommissioned their existing well at the roadside, that we could fit a tertiary system in there. And if we couldn't, we could always fall back to a holding tank. That wouldn't be preferred method by any means, but a holding tank with the Building Code Commission is an improvement over a privy. So knowing that, so we began the discussions and we began to design a house based on Curtis and Jasmine's feedback, knowing that we're going to have to revegetate the shoreline. We were exploring the tertiary system. We don't know exactly what can happen with that now. I don't know if the homeowners to the south, what happens with that it's basically a non-complying well that shouldn't have been placed there with the privy. So I'm not sure exactly what the rules are regarding that, because that now limits the septic that Claudia and Mike could put in there. I don't know if that can be moved. I don't know if they can explore some kind of agreement to shift that to another place on the property, or to put a drilled well in there when there would be enough room to move 15 meters back from the water and to put a tertiary system in there. So although we don't know today what the plan is, we want to design a house that fits. Nobody is getting what they want out of this. We understand that town planning and you have zoning bylaws, you want to move things further away from the water. But the proposal that was initiated and began the discussions with Curtis and Jasmine would have moved the house further back, would have reduced the lot coverage, would have reduced the side yard setbacks, would have had a shoreline buffer. There's nothing there around the neighbors. There's no shoreline buffer for either neighbor, but they were willing to put them as per the environmental assessment that was done. So the only holdback, the hiccup for us right now is that neighboring Sandpoint well that probably never should have been installed because it's too close to the earth vault privy that was there on site. And Building Code Commission, although nobody wants to put a holding tank in there, we're going to do our damnedest. And if you wanted to put, I don't expect you guys to vote on this. Say this is likely going to have to go to a deferral because more information is going to have to come out of this. But basically, we are hoping to garner. Does the committee see this, that everything is an improvement as proposed, and even if it's conditional upon a tertiary system being put in there, that this would be an acceptable resolution to the homeowners? It is a vast improvement for the property itself as proposed, but the homeowners are not willing to. They bought a cottage on a lake. They're not willing to build it beside a road to look at their neighbor's back door, and that's understandable as well too. So they were willing to spend this extra money, develop the shoreline. It really is a reasonable request from my perspective. I'm in the middle between planning and the homeowners. But if they don't get it, what's going to happen is we've started to design on an existing footprint. We'll build the existing right on the existing footprint, and that's not better for anybody. There's no variance required for that. And Chris has already commented that he would support putting the tertiary system in there, reducing the setback to 1.5 meters if we put it on piers. So that's the fallback. It's going to be built in the exact same spot, right on the shoreline, no revegetation. And I don't believe that's good for anybody.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Bruce, I'd like you to stay in the meeting, but if you can mute your microphone and turn your video off, we can reference you very quickly this way.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to ask any member of the public that wants to speak about this speak to this application.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there is one hand raised, so I will move them into the meeting now. As a reminder, please ensure you have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on, and please confirm your full name and mailing address before you begin commenting.
Hello there, we can see you.
Hi, can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi, my name is Lucy Norcia and I'm co-owner of the property on the south side that you were talking about. But I'd like my son-in-law, Peter, he's going to represent me. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, there we go. This is Peter.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. So through you, Mr. Chair, I would just like to speak on behalf of my in-laws that own the property to the south, 166 Camp Newport Road. Again, their concerns were more around the side yard variance. Yes, the existing cottage house structure was 1.8 meters. With the new proposed structure of 1.8, they felt that that was a little bit too close, especially with the garage, and of course the height going to 1.5 stories was their concern. In regards to the sandpoint, or the existing sandpoint, from what I have been advised by my father-in-law, when he had his structure built, he complied with all requests from the town at that point. So the sandpoint, again, I'm not sure if it was existing when that property was built and they had just assumed that as part of their water service, or it was placed during the build, but they had complied with all pieces that the town had requested, including a further setback. I believe that is referenced as well in the report about having a farther setback from the lake and using the footprint of the property to build an appropriate structure. So I just wanted to add that. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to speak to the application?
Members of the
Stone.
public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee.
Chair Stone, I'm just wondering if before Lucy and her son-in-law go, we can just get Lucy's son-in-law's name.
It was Peter. I don't know his last name.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry. So it's Peter, and the last name is Shaka, SCIACCA.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no additional hands raised.
All right, thank you. Then I will ask committee members, do you have any comments or questions about the application? Mr. Donald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I think I agree with the applicant's representative that some more information would be desirable. I get the intent that there is improvement all around. The issue of the privy and the sandpoint well is the crux of the matter, in my opinion. And I'm not sure what the options are to replace the sandpoint well with a drilled well, which would seem to alleviate the requirements of the setback and then permit a tertiary treatment system for the septic, which would appear to be the preferred option. There are many benefits to the application as submitted, with the issue of the sand well and the septic system being the crux of the matter. So I'd like to hear any other comments.
All right, committee members, anything else? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I'm wondering if our chief building official would like to enlighten us about the sandpoint and the privy and the possibility of a tertiary system, and what his thoughts are.
Director Nagy.
So through you, Chair Stone, thank you very much for this opportunity. So I did do a little research on 166 Camp Newport and their development. Under their septic system, it does note that the sandpoint was existing prior to that development. With respect to the existing privy, the building code does not require a building permit for privies. So staff do not go out and actually issue permits or verify, more or less setbacks to those privies. It's up to the owner of the property to ensure that they are meeting those setbacks. With the age of these particular properties, no issue sometimes is the way that things get treated, and it may be an existing setback from the existing privy to that sandpoint. In respect to the suggestion of the Building Code Commission and the privy being a better structure than, the holding tank being a better structure than the privy, I would concur that yes, it is in some cases better. However, as Richard noted within his report, this particular property through a redesign may actually achieve a more suitable effluent system by way of a traditional septic system, or even better, a treatment system. So, you know, that's what we kind of advised from when this issue with clearances of wells and sand points and things like that got brought up. So that's the standpoint that we're taking. There was a building code commission that the applicant did submit that relayed to a holding tank being used on a cottage. However, the restrictions and the allowances under that building code commission did relay more towards the property not being suitable by way of steep slopes, rocky conditions, and clay conditions, which to my understanding aren't the case on this particular property. So if they'd like to go ahead and bring it towards the building code commission, we would just need the application to come through so that, you know, building staff can make an actual either denial on the application, and then that triggers kind of the building code commission if the applicant would like to go that route. But that may be, you know, some supporting document if they get approval at BCC for this committee as well. So yeah. But
Thank you. Follow up?
any further questions, I'm here to answer. Yeah.
You were breaking up there, Chris. What were your final comments, Chris?
Oh, sorry. I was just ending saying that if there are any.
We lost you again. I'm going to move to Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. So, and I don't know if we're going to get Chris back or we're going to send him out and get him back because the question's directly related to him. It seems to me that under the legal non-conforming, they could build exactly what they had before and have a privy, which I think is probably less than ideal and not something we want to promote. Do you feel that if the applicant comes back with a tertiary system that can meet the requirements from the sand point and the well, that we can make it work? That's the question.
Yeah, through you. So this is to rebuild in the existing footprint and to have it supported with a tertiary system, just to clarify. Yeah, so we did go through that scenario with the applicant, and it does appear that there would be sufficient room to put in a tertiary system.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
And does that include the proposal with the garage?
That would include the proposal with the garage as well, yes.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
I guess to the applicant's representative, it sounds to me that's what your applicant or client would like you to do, is present a tertiary system and come back with all that information and allow committee to assess the application then.
So are you asking that of the applicant?
Is that what the applicant would like to do? Is Greg still there?
Yeah, still there. Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Greg, yes. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Like, we want to explore, but before any more investment was put into this, we want to kind of gather, does the rest or the majority of the committee really see what has been proposed? If we can fit a tertiary system in there, do they also see that as a benefit and it's an improvement to the property that with no guarantees they would likely support. So administration, although we had Curtis and Jasmine supporting this originally, Richard doesn't currently support what we've presented. And with that, tertiary is not supporting that. He wants to see it back on the road. And I understand that's the goal of planning. But before we invest anything else, does the rest of the committee kind of like, I'd like to hear everybody's comments basically, because if it doesn't look like it's likely, they're not interested in spending more money to figure something out if it's just going to be we're rebuilding on the same spot. That's basically where we're at. So
Thank you very much. I'm just, before I go to Mr. Donald, I'm going to ask Councillor Fitzgerald to follow up just one last time.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Well, I think the alternative of building on the footprint with a privy is not something we want to encourage. So it seems to me like the best thing to do would be to entertain the tertiary system and try and work with the applicant to make that happen. You know, we all know what's going on with effluent in the lakes and the cause and effects of it. And if there's an opportunity to eliminate that, I think we should. And if we can accommodate this, then we're not looking at just the old legal non-conforming footprint going back. So to me, it almost seems like we've OP'd and planned ourselves into a corner where we don't really give the applicant an option to do the right thing because of our planning and our OP. So I think I would support the application if the tertiary system can fit.
All right, thanks very much. Mr. Donald?
Thank you, Chair. And I concur with Councillor Fitzgerald's closing statements there, that giving the applicant the opportunity to do the right thing is desirable. One thing that has been alluded to but isn't clear to me through the conversation, I think of a tertiary system being a septic system, but there seems to be some discussion around maybe there's an alternative system to that, and that I'm not clear on. So I don't know if the applicant's representative, Mr. Bruce, could address that, or if it's a question for
Actually,
Director Nagy.
I'll go to Director Nagy.
You're absolutely right. In the building code, it notes that a septic system is a treatment system. A tertiary system is just a step up from that. So it actually has some additional treating capabilities within it. So a lot of the time around here, we see a lot of Waterloo biofilters or EcoFlows or something along those lines, where there's an added treatment measure either within the bed or within the tank that reduces the actual and cleans the effluent before it actually hits into the soils. So our official plan had noted that, if we're doing a reduction in setback to the water, we definitely want to make sure that we're seeing that added treatment through that septic system. So in short, it's just it's a septic system with added treatment within the tanker bed.
Thanks very much. Can I ask Richard, so in order to put this tertiary system in, do they need to build on the original footing?
It's my understanding, and Chris might be able to clarify, as well as with the help of Greg, that they would be able to rebuild in the existing non-complying dwelling location and with a tertiary treatment system. With a slight exception to the rules, the house would have to be on piers, I believe, and then the tertiary treatment system could be located a little closer to the dwelling than would typically be required, but that Chris has entertained that as an option in this instance.
All right, Mr. Nagy?
Yeah, so if I can add to Richard's comments, so the whole reason being potentially going closer to the structure, it would be through alternative solution of the building code, and basically we want to make sure that that existing sandpoint and the neighboring well is and obviously the water is meeting the minimum building code standards, and by not having a habitable space below the foundation, under the building code, they give you function and objective statements, and potentially we could have that alternative solution satisfy those statements and allow it to go closer. So yeah, exactly as Richard stated, that building on the exact same footprint would potentially lead to the availability of a tertiary system on that lot.
Thank you very much. Mr. Donald, once more.
Yeah, so to follow up to that, Richard's comments, Mr. Chair, does that mean then that we're now directing the applicant to go back to building on the existing footprint, but on elevating it so that we can put in a tertiary system? Or are we encouraging the relocation of the building so that we're relieving the setback on the shore, but then we're not allowing them to put in any kind of treatment system? I'm confused about what we're directing the applicant to do. This makes no sense.
I'll go to Richard.
That is a very good question, and I'm sorry to confuse. To simplify, what the OP policies talk to on Skeleton Lake, which is a cold water lake and which has lake trout habitat, is you should be maximizing your setback, and 30 meters is the rule. If because your lot is constrained, you need to deviate from that rule, then you need to look at measures that can be implemented to improve the situation, and that would be a tertiary treatment system. What we are suggesting is the alternative for this property, given those constraints, is to locate the garage and dwelling in one building, an attached garage and dwelling with attached garage further back on the property, to allow for a tertiary treatment system between that dwelling and attached garage and the lake. And this is very similar to what is proposed on the property to the south, 166 Camp Newport. So we took the OP policies and the direction for protecting lake health and aquatic habitat, and suggested that they should actually look at putting the building further back on the property. And that's what we were encouraging. It should be noted that earlier it was noted that we'd be giving up a lot by pushing that those OP policies, because there were benefits being proposed in this instance. I'd just like to clarify that all development on waterfront properties are subject to site plan control. So things like shoreline vegetation, we would look at that anyway. So really what staff is asking for is for those OP policies to be considered on a tight lot like this, and to look for a more optimal or more appropriate development. That's all we were suggesting.
All right, thanks very much. Mrs. Renwick.
Just to clarify then, sorry, through you, Chair Stone, and to Mr. Clark or to Richard, that the applicant was not interested in that suggestion, are you saying, to move the house back? From
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that option was put on the table, but it was not the preferred option for the applicant.
Okay.
Any other comments of committee? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I guess I feel that there's probably a disconnect between the applicant and their proposal and what our OP and policies. So we're too far apart. The applicant's not getting what they want, and planning can't recommend approval. So I just think we have to look at the alternative, and the alternative is that they build on the current footprint, legal non-conforming, and have a privy, or they build where they would like to build and have a tertiary system. And either way, there's going to be something on the property. I think we have to focus on the effluent and how we handle it. And I just don't think that a privy is an option for someone who wants to retire up here, or is a good option for the lake or the neighbors. So I think I would again reiterate that I would support the applicant coming back with a proposal for a tertiary system, and with appropriate setbacks. If we can move it back further from the water, that would be great. But I understand that they don't want to build at the back of their property and have an elevated septic system in their front yard. I get that.
So
I would love for it to come back.
So I asked the question earlier, if they build on the existing footprint, could they put in a tertiary system? And I believe the answer is yes.
Yes.
All right, because I don't believe I can agree with what is proposed right now. But if they build on the existing footprint, I can get my head around that, even though it's far closer to the water than we like. Councillor Fitzgerald?
I would suggest a deferral with more information regarding septic. So basically an amended application and come back to committee.
Is that a form of a motion? All right, do we have a seconder? All right. Then I will wait till Julie puts up a motion to defer. Mr. Bruce, can I ask you, coming back next month, and staff, is that possible? But is 1 month enough time to get together?
Yeah, basically what's going to happen, or Claudia and Mike Daniels probably going to have to talk to their neighbors to the south, figure out what we can do with potentially a relocation of a well. We fit a tertiary system in that space where the privy was previously, and we can show you that the existing application will work with the tertiary system with a potential movement of that Sandpoint well. And then ideally we present that as is. If it's approved, great. If not, then they will reconstruct near the water with that tertiary system that Chris has already looked at. Is that fair and reasonable? It's just with the whole back thing, if the neighbor, when you looked at the pictures there that Richard had shown earlier, the neighbor to the north, their property actually is further out into the water, and they are quite close to the water as well too. To build at the back of the property, nobody buys a lakefront property to look at their neighbor's rear door. That's the reality. So that's why that's not acceptable to them. So those will be the two choices. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Jason Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the matter of minor variance application A40-2020 HTE, is it supposed to be 2020? Okay, 2020 HTE be postponed for 1 month to provide additional details. All in favor of deferral? And that's carried. Okay. Richard, we're moving on to 105 White House Road.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I have changed the settings on my Zoom right now, and I'm just trying to figure out how to fix them.
Whoops.
And I have done that. So I will continue. And I'll just share my screen also.
Okay. And I understand there's a small amendment as well that you'd like?
That's right.
Okay.
So the subject property in this instance is located at 105 White House Road. The lot is designated rural in the official plan and is zoned rural 1. The applicant is proposing to construct and this is the change, a 70.5 meter squared 2-story detached garage, whereas in the staff report, I noted it as a 69 square meter detached garage. A minor variance is required to reduce the required side yard setback from 6 meters to 3.9 meters and reduce the front yard setback from 15 meters to 13.7 meters for the detached garage. The proposed new garage is a Quonset hut design and will have a customized wood frame facade. The garage is situated in proximity to the existing buildings and along the existing driveway. These uses are all pushed to the northeast corner of the site, away from natural heritage constraints, which include a large unevaluated wetland and a large low-lying area around it. This location is appropriate as it is set back sufficiently from natural constraints, and there's no development on the adjacent lot to the east, as that lot is vacant. And I'll just show you where the garage is proposed. The encroachments are quite minor in scale, being just a 2.1 meter encroachment within the side yard and a 1.3 meter encroachment within the front yard. As such, they're not anticipated to result in any impacts on neighboring properties. The application was circulated to in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, and no written comments were received. On review of staff's report prior to today's meeting, the proponent did point out the slight error in the size of the garage. So we're suggesting through you, Chair Stone, that a quick amendment to fix that would be appropriate, and Julie has that ready to go. This is so aside from that, that change is not something that would impact staff's recommendation. And in this instance, the application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests for a minor variance as set out in section 45.1 of the Planning Act, and therefore staff are recommending approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on this application.
Thank you. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments about the application.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
All right, the members of the public that wish to speak to this?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thanks very much. Committee members, any comments or questions? All right, then I'm going to read the original motion and then we can amend it. So moved by Brandon Stapleton, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that minor variance application A43 2020 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 3.1.15.3b and 5.8.4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to reduce the side yard setback for a detached garage from 6 meters to 3.9 meters and reduce the front yard setback from 15 meters to 13.7 meters, both to permit the construction of a 69 square foot 2-story detached garage only, conditional on a 5-meter wide treed buffer comprised of native trees being maintained or established for visual screening purposes between the garage and the front lot line. And we have that small amendment that we're going to put up. So I can use the same movers and seconders. So moved by Brandon Stapleton, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that the following be hereby deleted, 69 square meters, and that the following word be hereby added, 70.5 square meters. All in favor of the amendment? And that's carried. And now, having read the whole motion with the amendment, so I will now ask all in favor as amended. Wahoo, thank you very much. All right, that was easy. All right, Richard, you're speaking to 49 Europe Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just a correction, it is 47 Europe Lane.
You're right, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And the application is A02 2021, and the proponent is Ball. So I'll share my screen. And I'm hoping you can see my screen.
Yes.
Fantastic. So the lot is designated, oh, and again, it's 47 Europe Lane. The lot is designated waterfront in the official plan and is zoned shoreline residential 3 with an exception 1804. The applicant is proposing to construct a 100 square meter boathouse over an existing 15 meter by 15 meter dock in this location. A minor variance is required to reduce the setback from type 1 fish habitat from 30 meters to 0 meters for the boathouse only. As noted in staff's report, the property was created in 2008 through a consent and rezoning process. And at the time, a 30-meter setback was deemed necessary for all buildings and structures except docks, which were allowed, but only within predetermined envelopes. And this was to help protect fish habitat. Site plan control was later used to ensure these matters were addressed through the development of the property. Waterfront character protection policies in the official plan would apply in this instance and encourage maintenance of that character by retaining the traditional mix of land uses along the waterfront at an overall low density, as well as preserving the natural environment. In this instance, since the boathouse was located over top of an existing deck, or is proposed over top of an existing deck, and all other development on the property is set back 30 meters from the shoreline and screened from view with a robust shoreline buffer, impacts on the surrounding waterfront character is anticipated to be minimal. With respect to policies in Part B of the official plan, which would apply to protect fish habitat in this instance and prohibit certain development within 30 meters of type 1 fish habitat, a report was prepared in support of this proposal by Riverstone Environmental Solutions. Consistent with prior studies on the lands and the shoreline, the Riverstone report characterized the fish habitat along the front of the property as type 1 fish habitat due to the presence of aquatic vegetation. Riverstone concluded that there will be little, if any, additional impacts resulting from the proposed new boathouse compared to the existing dock. Additionally, they provided recommendations that would be required to be implemented to help mitigate potential negative impacts, and these would be implemented through a site plan amendment. As can be seen in the site photos, the shoreline buffer on this property is intact. There are several mature trees retained and plantings are doing very well. A condition is nevertheless recommended to address a non-complying amenity area, which is a patio and can be seen in some of the pictures. A condition to require finalization of the original shore road allowance closure that had begun in 2018 but has not been finalized is also recommended. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and to the Ferry Lake Association, and no written comments were received. The application would appear to be conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests for a minor variance, and therefore staff are recommending approval. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Thanks very much. Call on the applicant or representative to speak to this.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm we do have one hand raised, so I will move them into the panel now. As a reminder, please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and please confirm your name and mailing address.
All right, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
But
You can put your video on.
No, here's a button here. You think I know how to do this by now, but anyways, good morning, guys and ladies. I guess we're not allowed to say that anymore. Anyways, whatever we're supposed to say. Anyways, I think this one's pretty straightforward. I don't really think I have anything to add. I know one of the conditions was the shore road allowance being closed. That has been started. It's actually been paid for, so it was an oversight by everyone. Everything's been signed. Like I said, it's been paid for, and we all just assumed it was done, but whether it got caught in the mail or with the lawyers, but that has been set up, so that's all set. And yeah, if there's any questions, I'm happy to help, but I think it's a pretty straightforward application. So thanks for your time.
Thanks very much. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thanks very much. Committee members, any comments or questions? Mrs. Renwick.
Through you, Chair Stone, just a clarification of when applications like this come forward, there's no indication of what the actual boathouse will look like once it's built. I think there's that. Is that typically something that we would receive, Richard? Or does that really matter right now? We know the floor plan of it, but we don't know what it's going to look like. Does that matter?
The design is important with respect to height and the overall footprint. So in this instance, it's a flat roof boathouse.
Okay.
And it would comply with height. I I'm not sure if in this instance we have elevation drawings, but what we'd be approving is the boathouse in the location, and it would comply with all other provisions of the zoning bylaw. So those things like height, there's a requirement for that in the bylaw already, and they would have to comply with that unless they sought a variance. And the size, which we're in this variance, we're actually, the decision is actually that it's going to be 100 square meters, and that is the maximum boathouse size. So we can work with our applicants to request that information for you in the future. So it helps in your decision making. But I'm not sure if we had it in this instance, unless Blaine has it handy. Maybe he could show you.
I do agree. It would be nice to see at least a description of it or a drawing. It doesn't need to be expensive to, I don't need an artist rendering, but I think it would be nice. I'd also like to know the color. And is that in our bylaw? All right, well, maybe we should work on that, because if they put a pink one up, I might not be happy.
No, but it is actually a good point, because one of the things we're looking on in shoreline development is maintaining that waterfront character, and having things that blend in is important. So yeah, the problem is that's, I guess, a little bit subjective, so we don't actually regulate color.
All right, well, so that's something for me to bring up with council, I guess. One other question. You mentioned the amenity area, which is a little patio with the fire pit, which is cool, but you said it's non-conforming. Do they need to do anything about that?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, there is a condition that we're recommending that the patio, which is the reason it's non-complying is when you add up the width of all shoreline structures within 15 meters of the shoreline frontage, it can only be a certain width. And as I said before, the dock itself is 15 meters, so they've reached the max with the dock. And that means anything else along the shoreline, unless it's tucked in right behind the dock, is going to contribute to too much width. So we'd be looking at that through the site plan amendment process and just asking for it to be moved over behind the dock or be removed.
Okay. All right. Any other questions of committee? Then I'll read the motion. Moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that minor variance application A02-2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 3.5.1 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P as amended in order to reduce the setback from type 1 fish habitat from 30 meters to 0 meters for a 100 square foot boathouse only. Conditional on the original shore road allowance being stopped up, closed, and sold to the landowner, and the owner revegetating the shoreline buffer to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville as a requirement of an amended site plan agreement. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right. Moving right along. Richard, your last one here, 251 West Browns Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. This one's right around the corner from the last one, and I'll just share my screen. So the subject property, as Chair Stone mentioned, is 451 West Browns Road. And again, very close to 47 Europe Lane. The lot is designated rural and is zoned light industrial. The applicant is proposing to recognize the location of an existing single detached dwelling within the front yard setback and an existing garage and steel cargo container within the side yard setback. A minor variance is requested for the dwelling as it is set back 2.84 meters from the front yard lot or from the front lot line, whereas a 9-meter setback applies in this instance. The existing garage and storage container are set back 2.87 meters and 0.68 meters respectively to the side yard, whereas 5 meters is required. As noted in staff's report, the existing dwelling is considered a legal non-complying building as it's located within the front yard, but this location was approved in the past through issuance of building permit. In contrast, the existing garage and steel cargo container within the side yards were not built with the benefit of a permit, so they are non-complying but not considered legal non-complying. In this instance, there is no physical development proposed in relation to the non-complying structures on site. The structures exist today, and you can see them in the site photos. Perhaps this one's best. It's noted that the structures were located in the present location to avoid site constraints in the vicinity, and those being the wooded area to the rear and a sloped area in behind them. Given that they exist, they are small in scale and they're physically separated from any surrounding development, as well as beside a 10-meter right-of-way where no development can occur. There appears to be no concern. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and no written comments were received. The application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests for a minor variance, and therefore staff are recommending approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on this application.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to speak to the application.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Any members of the public that wish to speak to this?
And members of the public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And again, Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Any members of committee that wish to speak to this? Nothing. All right, I'll read the motion. Moved by Helena Renwick, seconded by Kenneth Donald. Be it resolved that minor variance application A09-2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 5.6.5 and X, A, and 9 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to recognize a front yard setback of 2.84 meters for an existing single detached dwelling, a side yard setback of 2.87 meters for an existing 29.5 square meter detached garage, and a side yard setback of 0.68 meters for an existing 13.7 square meter steel cargo container. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you very much.
All right, Adam, it's your debut.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. Just going to share my screen. All right, everyone can see that all right?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the property is located at 32 Center Street North. The lot is designated urban residential and also falls within the town's intensification corridor. Further, the property is zoned residential 3 with a site-specific exception, 1840. For committee's information, the site-specific exception allows 6 units within the existing building and further allows that only 8 parking spots be located on the site. The applicant is proposing to construct 1 additional dwelling unit within the existing building in the basement level. As mentioned, there are 6 units contained within the building at present. A minor variance is required only to permit the additional dwelling unit. The applicant has also indicated that the existing building consists of residential rental units that are part of the attainable housing program with the District of Muskoka, and it is the intent of the applicant to explore opportunities to include the proposed unit as a part of that attainable housing program. As mentioned in the staff report, no external changes are proposed to the site, and that the 1 additional unit will be utilized for the attainable housing program. In this regard, staff are satisfied that the proposal maintains the intent of the official plan with respect to intensification within the corridor, and further that the utilization of the site for the attainable housing program allows the town to implement alternative development standards with respect to parking provisions. And as such, staff are satisfied that the proposal is consistent with both the OP and the town zoning bylaw. As mentioned, the variance is only requested for the additional dwelling unit. The applicant is not seeking relief of parking. The applicant did indicate that the existing parking on site is currently underutilized, and it is not anticipated that the additional dwelling unit will pose any parking considerations. Staff are satisfied with that approach. The application was further circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. At the time of writing this report, no comments were received from agencies or the public. And if I can stop sharing. Staff are satisfied that the application is consistent with both the official plan and the provincial policy statement. Further, the application satisfies the 4 tests for minor variance, and as such, staff are recommending that the proposal be given approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to speak to this.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. Chair Stone, I can confirm we do have 1 hand raised. As a reminder, please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and please confirm your name and mailing address.
Mr. Gallagher.
Good morning. Good morning, members. John P. Gallagher, 24 Hibbard Road, Huntsville, P1H 1C9, and I'm here representing Burnell Road Management. Burnell Road Management has provided multiple residential attainable housing projects in Huntsville and continue to have a positive working relationship with Community Living Huntsville. As Adam had stated, the application is to allow for 1 additional unit within the building. It's in the north side of the building in the basement. There's currently a door, and the area is being underutilized as it's being used for storage and mechanical. Given the lack of rental units in the area, it's desirable to have an additional unit, especially when we're dealing with an area that has been identified as the intensification area. Andrew had spoken to the existing zoning, so I won't go into that. We are looking to change the number to 7 units and keep the rest the way it's worded, such that the parking that's currently existing will fulfill all the requirements. On most days, there are only a couple cars parked in the lot. A lot of times with renters under the attainable program, they may not have a vehicle. They could have 1, and in most cases, if they do, it's usually 1 per family. The land use in the area is multiple residential, both north and south of the subject lands. There is a dentist's office actually located on the property to the north. There's industrial land located to the west across the road, and single-family dwellings exist on the King Street extension to the rear. Center Street is a major road with transit. The location is within walking distance to shopping, doctors' offices, and schools. It's in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. The form of the development is compact, as there is no exterior footprint increase. My client has provided attainable housing for this project, as all the current units are in the program and have entered into an operating agreement with the District of Muskoka. And this is secured on title to the lands and registered on title to the lands. This has resulted in substantial decreases in rent for residents of the building. And it is my client's intent to seek out possibility of rental in conjunction with community living Huntsville. It's my opinion that the proposal meets the intent of the official plan. The impact is minor when reviewed, keeping with the land use pattern in the area. And there would be no other exceptions required to the standards established in the bylaw. We are looking at increasing the density by half a unit, as the current zoning and official plan would allow for 6.5, sorry. There are public benefits to providing apartments in Huntsville, and we feel that the application meets the 4 tests, and we support staff's recommendation to approve the application. I'd be glad to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any members of the public that wish to speak to this?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Members of committee, any comments or questions? Mrs. Renwick.
Just a comment and a question through you, Chair Stone. I guess my comment is I'm so glad to see that these buildings and that this group is actually creating these places for people to live, and I commend them and I appreciate the work that they're doing. The second question I had, and perhaps Adam, you might be able to answer this, in a residential unit like this with potentially 6.5 units, how many parking spots would they require like through the official plan? How many parking spots do they need? Is there a requirement? Perhaps that's the question.
Adam?
Mr. Chair, through you, I believe it's 1.5 units per unit, or 1.5 spaces per unit. That's found in the zoning bylaw. Okay. However, the site-specific exception at that time was to allow for eight parking spaces with 6 units. So there already is a special provision on site for parking. In this case, as mentioned, the official plan does allow for alternative standards where attainable housing is being proposed. And that's why the applicant is sticking with the 8 spaces. And as Mr. Gallagher has identified, there will still be more spaces than units on site.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Love to see more attainable housing. That's excellent. If there's no other questions, I'll read the motion. Moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Jason Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that minor variance application A05-2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 6.1 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P, respecting specific exception 1840 in order to permit 1 additional dwelling unit. Sorry, I'm just all in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Adam. Knocked it out of the park.
Thank you.
All right, Kirsten, you're going to speak to 284 Springfield Road.
I am just technically challenged as per always, so I'm just hopeful that this will work when I'm trying to share my screen. So please forgive me if there's any issues. Man, oh man, my apologies. I'm having so much trouble making this work. You would think I'd be an expert by now, but
Yeah, that's
obviously
right.
not. So it does not want me to do this. Hold on one second. No, it's not going to. Oh, there we go. There we go. Again, my apologies.
There we go.
This is ridiculous.
Got it.
Okay. So can you see that screen?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, I've got to move it because I can't see what I'm supposed to say if I do that. Okay. Are we good now?
Yes.
Perfect. Is that, there we go. Okay. Oh, so sorry about all of that. That's ridiculous. So this application, the property is located at 284 Springfield Road. The lot is designated waterfront in the official plan and zoned shoreline residential 1. And you can see this is the lot lines, of course, are not quite right. This is the existing dwelling and the existing detached garage. So the application is to permit the reconstruction of the dwelling, attaching it to the existing garage. So there would be a 45.9 square meter addition here. This is, I know it's hard to read, but this is the first addition to attach it to the dwelling itself. And then a portion of this deck would have, the deck at the front of the dwelling would have a basement underneath it. And then on this side of the dwelling, there would be an addition to the deck here. And part of the existing deck would be converted to dwelling. So the total of the two small additions are 3.64 square meters and 2.57 square meters. And this is the large addition of 45.9 square meters. And then at the shoreline, there is a woodshed located here. And at the shoreline, there's a deck that would both be removed. And in order to do all this, there's quite a series of variances that are required. Both of the side and rear yard setbacks would have to be recognized and reduced to accommodate the additions to the buildings. However, the additions aren't going to encroach any closer than existing development into those two setbacks. And the proposed additions appear to be in keeping with the character of the area, as this portion of Springfield Road consists of smaller lots with dwellings located in close proximity to each other, and the development is oriented towards the shoreline. To help mitigate any potential visual impact when viewed from the lake and adjacent properties, the proposed changes to the dwelling would all be located to the rear of the lot, and there is some existing mature vegetation. So here's this is the existing garage and the existing dwelling from the rear of the property, and then along the shoreline you can see there's some really big trees that will screen any changes to the dwelling from that perspective. And although the primary lot coverage seems to be increasing significantly, this is because we're swapping the primary lot coverage will now include the garage instead of being accessory lot coverage, but we're also recommending that the accessory lot coverage is reduced in order to ensure that no additional development will occur on the property. There is an existing retaining wall at the shoreline that runs across the front of the property. However, it's not proposed to be removed currently, but we will work with the owners to implement some mitigation measures and to ensure that the shoreline amenity area and shoreline buffer are established as per the requirements of the zoning bylaw. One letter of support was received from a neighboring property owner, and it was circulated to committee, and no objections have been received. And as such, the application appears to conform to the policies of the official plan and are consistent with the provincial policy statement, and staff are recommending approval.
All right, thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to speak to this.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. Chair Stone, I can confirm there is one hand raised, so I will move them into the panel now. As a reminder, please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and please do confirm your name and mailing address.
Good morning, John P. Gallagher, 24 Hibberd Road, Huntsville, P1H 1C9. And I'm here representing the Bonomos on their plan to add on to their existing property. The Bonomos have recently retired and they're looking at moving up to the area with their plans. We started this process about a year ago, working towards trying to come up with a plan that suits the site. And as Kirsten had explained the application quite well, there are a number of variances, but again, they're a victim of the fact that the existing garage is in its current location. And because it was previously an accessory building, once it joined to the dwelling, it now forms part of the principal structure. However, overall, the density of the site is only proposed to be increased 1.6% overall. And that would also include the issue of closing up and purchasing the Shore Road allowance. The property itself is well set back from the water. The existing large coniferous trees block the view from the water. The neighbor to the east is located closer to the water, and the neighbor to the west is located some distance away. I believe you did receive one letter of support this morning. I understand there was a second one, but she hadn't got submitted to me at this time. The proposal, as Kirsten had spoken about, is really to join the garage to the dwelling. There were a number of recommendations that staff had suggested, and we're working with staff to achieve those, primarily looking at getting the revegetation plan and removal of structures, and in that regard, and closing up and purchasing the Shore Road allowance, the portion that is by land. Previously, there were issues of siltation and erosion into the lake, and that was why the retaining wall was done. And so anything we can do to enhance the shoreline in the area adjacent that is a reasonable request. As part of the overall proposal, there will be a new septic system being built on the property, and that septic system would be in excess of the 30-meter setback from the water body. I feel the application meets the intent of the official plan by locating the development well beyond the setback from the water and keeping the design compact in nature. Additional planting will be done, and that will be entrenched in the site plan agreement. And the policies of the official plan support redevelopment of existing properties. Meets the intent of the zoning bylaw by locating the construction in close proximity to the existing building and providing setbacks that are appropriate in this situation. The coverage is in keeping with other properties along this strip, as Kirsten had mentioned, that are smaller lot size but meet the requirements. The garage is existing, so the variance to recognize the setback there aren't of any great impact, and I think that's reflected in the letter of support from the neighbor. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any, and we would ask that committee respectfully support staff's recommendation to approve with the recommendations and conditions imposed to oversee the orderly development of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members of the public that wishes to speak to this application?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
All right, thank you. Members of committee, any comments or questions? Seeing none. Moved by Brandon Stapleton, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that minor variance application A01-2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 5.3.4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to recognize the existing westerly side yard setback of 0.69 meters and the existing rear yard setback of 7.64 meters for a 1 1/2 story attached garage. To permit a reduction in the westerly interior side yard setback from 6 meters to 0.69 meters for an addition to a single family dwelling. Permit a reduction of the rear yard setback from 10 meters to 7.64 meters for an addition to a single family dwelling. Permit an increase in primary lot coverage from 7.3% to 14%. Conditional on the original Shore Road allowance being stopped up and closed, the accessory lot coverage being reduced from 11.4% to 6.3%, the shoreline deck and woodshed being removed, the shoreline amenity area being brought into compliance with the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P, and the shoreline buffer being reestablished to the satisfaction of the town. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right, chugging right along. Kirsten, 20 Church Street.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. I'm just making sure it's sharing again properly. This property is located at 20 Church Street. The lot is designated urban settlement area residential in the official plan, and it's zoned residential too. This application, again, is there's quite a series of variances associated with it. It's to permit a 1-story addition to a single detached dwelling and an attached garage. So the proposal would include the demolition of an existing deck at the rear, an existing deck at the front. And there's a carport that would be demolished on this side. And then there would be the construction of a garage, a new deck and stairs at the front, and then the addition to the rear of the dwelling and a new deck at the rear. The addition at the rear would follow the existing side yard setback of the dwelling, and the proposed garage would maintain the westerly side yard setback of the carport. Although the stairs that are proposed at the front of the building would encroach slightly closer than existing into the front yard setback, it is in keeping with the established building line on surrounding properties. I can show you, oh, it's a bit far out, but you can see that the dwellings are all in roughly the same setback from the traveled road. Similar to previous applications, the accessory lot coverage is proposed to being reduced to limit additional development on the property with the increase in the primary lot coverage. There was an error in my report when I noted that the side yard where the existing carport is would be reduced to accommodate the new garage, but I had that wrong. I thought that the existing setback was 1.33 and we were going down to 1.27, but it's the reverse. So the resolution has been updated to reflect this. We're just recognizing the existing setback on this side of the property. There's no further encroachments being proposed. And as noted in my report, the lands are within an area of influence of the D4 dump site. And we also had a neighbor that submitted a letter of concern about drainage. So the recommendation includes a requirement to provide additional information on the potential influence of the D4 site, as well as an engineered drainage plan that would both be submitted as part of the building permit application, and then any recommendations that need to be incorporated would form part of the building permit. No objections have been received, And the application appears to meet the intent of the policies of the official plan and is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and staff are recommending approval. I will just quickly show you some of the pictures so you can see. So this is the existing carport, existing open front porch and stairs. And then this moves to the rear yard where there's a fence all around the rear. This shed will be removed. And then that's the existing setback between the two dwellings is very close. And this is the existing deck that'll be taken off. And then there would be an addition here. And the new deck would project slightly further into the rear backyard, but it won't encroach into the rear yard's setback. So, and staff recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call on the applicant or representative to speak to this application.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. Chair Stone, I can confirm there is one hand raised, so I will move them into the meeting now. As a reminder, please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and please confirm your name and mailing address.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak to our application. My name is Kathy Donaldson. I'm one with my husband, the owner of 20 Church. So I just had a couple of things that I wanted to say. One was with respect to the conditions. We were surprised to learn of the former dump site and the need for the soil test. We understand from the town staff that a letter report would meet the requirements of the D4 assessment. And we're hoping that the committee is in agreement with that. It's my understanding that the D4 full assessment is quite expensive, upwards of $10,000 is what I heard. I'm not exactly sure, but we did get a quote for the letter, and it's a quarter of that, so a little bit friendlier, I guess. The other thing, as to the drainage plan condition, we have similar goals to the Klodnicki's to ensure good drainage as our lot continues to be the recipient of neighboring runoff. And we've had expensive repairs needed in a number of years ago also due to flooding in our basement. So we're in agreement with making sure that the drainage is appropriate. Jessica Coker of Due North Design and Drafting is also here. So if there's any sort of technical questions, I would refer to her.
Okay.
But guys, just thank you again. We're looking forward to hopefully making 20 Church Street our forever home here in Huntsville. So I think that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any members of the public that wish to speak to this application?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Before I go to committee for questions, can I ask Kirsten, this D4 assessment, we as a committee and council have also, we've waived this before because it seemed ridiculous. So where's the identified dump site and how far away from this property is it?
In this instance, the dump site is located at Brendale Square.
Oh.
And so it is, we have had different assessments provided in the past, and in some instances, there's been no remediation or recommendations required, and in others, they do suggest that certain things occur. So it's prudent of recommendation to ensure that some form of assessment is done, whether it takes the form of a letter that just clarifies that there is no leachate or methane potential occurring on the site. That's sufficient. And I know in discussions with the owner's agent, we were talking about what other forms the assessment could take, be it a letter or a full study. And that's where I left the wording as assessment to be a bit more general, in that if there was anything that needed to be done, it would be done through the building permit process.
So I've seen Jessica pop up here. Do you wish to speak to this point?
Yes, we have been in touch with Soil Engineers Limited. They have identified that landfill record is about 210 meters on the down gradient of this property. It is of their opinion that there's no issues, in addition to other studies that they've done in the area. If we are able to waive this condition, that would be wonderful. I'm sure my client would appreciate that. Yeah, I just wanted to note the opinion of the soil engineers. We have done our research and inquired about that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Committee members, comments or questions? Mr. Donald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Yeah, I concur with your comments that the issue of Brendale Square being a previous landfill has come up a number of times with the committee. And I always wrestle with, why do we impose a requirement on some people and then other people ask for relief from that and we grant it. So I'd be, if other developments have happened around that area without any issues, I'd be inclined to have a discussion around waiving that requirement.
Thank you very much. Committee members, comments or questions? Councillor Fitzgerald.
I would make the motion to remove the D4.
Mr. Stapleton?
I would second that.
All right. So there's a motion on the floor. I'll wait until Julie gets the paperwork in order. Kirsten, did you wish to weigh in on this any further? Perfect.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair Stone.
If there's no other comments or questions, why don't I go ahead and read the original motion? So moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Kenneth Donald. Be it resolved that minor variance application A03-2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 5.2.4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to recognize the westerly side yard setback of 1.33 meters for an attached garage. Recognize the front yard setback of 1.99 meters for a covered porch. Reduce the front yard setback from 1.5 meters to 1.2 meters for an unenclosed staircase. Recognize the existing easterly side yard setback of the existing dwelling for an addition and new deck, and increase the primary lot coverage from 35% to 44%. Conditional on an engineered drainage plan being submitted as part of the building permit to ensure that there is no effect to abutting parcels. A D4 assessment being provided and any recommendation being implemented through the building permit application. The accessory lot coverage being reduced from 5% to 0%. And we're just waiting on the amendment. All right, I'll use, so moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that the following line be hereby deleted. A D4 assessment being provided and any recommendations being implemented through the building permit application. All those in favor of the amendment? And that's carried. So you heard the original motion with the amendment. All in favor? And that's carried. All right. Great, thank you. Kirsten, the 357 Britannia Road application.
And there I am muted this time instead. It's you'll be so happy that I'm not presenting anymore after this meeting, I think. This property is located at 357 Britannia Road. The lot's designated rural in the official plan and it's zoned rural 1. There's 2 applications that are being considered, a concurrent consent and minor variance. The owner is proposing to create 1 new rural lot that would be used as a woodland retreat only. The lot containing the woodland retreat would have no road frontage. And our bylaw has a bit of an interesting quirk in it that a woodland retreat isn't a permitted use on a lot that has frontage on a year-round maintained road. However, when we look at the rural zone lot provisions, we can't create a new rural lot unless it has 150 meters of frontage on a year-round maintained road. So in order to address this conflicting situation, a minor variance was submitted that would permit a lot to be created with no road frontage. And then in addition, as a condition of approval of the consent, we would include a requirement for a 5126 agreement that noted that a single family dwelling would not be a permitted use on the property. So in this instance, the severed lot contains a dwelling and accessory structures, and it would have approximately 4 hectares in area with all of the existing 213 meters of frontage on Britannia Road. And then the retained lands are currently vacant. They would have an area of approximately 32 hectares with no road frontage. And access is proposed to be over an existing right-of-way that travels through the property. This existing right-of-way provides access to the lands to the rear for an abutting property owner currently. Letters of support were received from neighboring property owners and no objections have been received. And this is the existing property from the road, existing dwelling, and then this shows the lands towards the rear of the backyard of the property. No objections have been received as noted, and staff are recommending approval.
Thank you. We'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. Chair Stone, I can confirm we do have 1 hand raised, so I will move them into the meeting now. As a reminder, please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and please do confirm your name and mailing address.
Morning, John Gallagher, 24 Hibbard Road, Huntsville, P1H 1C9, and I'm representing the Luptons who are following along online. I think Kirsten has described the application quite well. It is a unique situation, given the fact that they had all this extensive frontage, but they're not allowed to, I guess, sever it as a residential lot. The family wanted to retain some sort of connection to the property that they grew up on and enjoyed over all the years of living on Britannia Road. And so they did meet with staff, Curtis, back a few months ago, and were given the direction on the woodland retreat approach. As Kirsten had mentioned, the property is quite large and there is an existing right-of-way through it. That right-of-way was established in 1955, and there is a trail that runs through the woods to the back of the property. The proposal for the woodland retreat is in keeping with the intent of the official plan, as the official plan does allow for recreational use. And with the trying to, I guess, keep it tight so that there are no plans to do a single family dwelling, we're going through 2 additional processes. The first is the minor variance, And the second is the condition of the 5126 agreement that will specifically outlay the definition of the woodland retreat as the only permitted use there. And as you may or may not be aware, under the bylaw, a woodland retreat cannot be used more than 60 days in a year and no more than 10 days in a month. And it specifically requires it not to have frontage on a year-round municipally maintained road. They have spoken with the neighbors and have provided letters of support for the application. The conditions that the staff have proposed are appropriate to the site, and as such, we would have no objection to the recommendations of the staff in that regard. I'd be glad to answer any questions should you have any, and we would respectfully ask you to support staff in their recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any members of the public that wish to speak to this application?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raised hand button or press *9 on their telephone to indicate that they would like to address committee. Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Members of committee? All right, seeing none. Kirsten, do I read the consent first or second?
Consent second, please.
Okay. So moved by Helena Renwick, seconded by Jason Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that committee approve minor variance A08-2021 HTE to provide relief from subsection 5.8.4 to reduce the required road frontage from 150 meters to 0 meters to permit the creation of one new rural lot to be used as a woodland retreat. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that committee approve consent application B06-2021 HTE for the creation of one new rural lot, conditional on a registerable description of the severed lot being submitted to the Secretary Treasurer, including all rights of ways and easements, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The owner's taxes being in good standing. A site inspection fee of $235 being paid to the town of Huntsville. A consent finalization fee in the amount of $180 being paid to the town of Huntsville. 5% cash in lieu of parkland being paid to the town of Huntsville on the severed lands. Minor variance A08-2021 HTE being approved and in effect. The retained lands being subject to an agreement pursuant to section 5126 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, acknowledging that a single family dwelling is not a permitted use on the property. The applicant obtaining written confirmation from the District of Muskoka that an entrance permit can be issued for the proposed severed lot onto the district road. A 3-meter or 10-foot road widening across the frontage of the retained lands being dedicated to the District of Municipality of Muskoka for road widening purposes. And finally, the lands being subject to an agreement with the District Municipality of Muskoka pursuant to section 5126 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, respecting the location of wells in relation to the district road. Whew. Comments or questions? All in favor? There you go. That's carried. Okay, so we are moving out of the public meetings. Now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications to be concluded. We will now move into the non-public portion of the meeting to deal with consent applications. If the applicant or their agent wishes to make comments regarding their application, please raise your hand after the presentation. Repeat. Okay. All right, Kirsten, you are speaking to the Isaacs application at 62 North Drive.
I am. Thank you, Chair Stone. This property is located at 62 North Drive. The lot's designated waterfront in the official plan and it's zoned rural 2. The application is for a lot addition and vacant lands with an area of approximately 3.9 hectares and 20 meters of frontage on West Court would be severed from this parcel and added to 76 West Court. So 76 West Court is the shoreline lot, and this portion of the lot would be added to the shoreline parcel, and then the remaining lot, although it has significant frontage on North Drive, we would consider the West Court Drive frontage to be the new front lot line. No new lots are being created through this application. These lands were identified as containing some natural constraints, including deer wintering habitat and steep slopes. And as such, an environmental assessment was conducted to ensure that the lot addition wouldn't impact these features. Recommendations on vegetation retention, maintaining setbacks from slopes, and directing development away from areas of conifer cover will all be implemented through site plan control. 2 objection letters have been received, and they both cited concerns with environmental features on the property, the potential for erosion, and I think some pictures were attached to the report. And then there was some question about zoning conformity on the benefiting lands, so on 76 West Court, as having some structures at the shoreline that weren't permitted. And as noted in my report, the lands will be subject to site plan control to implement all of the recommendations of the environmental impact assessment and protect the natural features. The owners have further been advised of the zoning concerns raised regarding the deck and shed located at the shoreline, and staff will follow up and ensure that they are brought into conformity with the zoning bylaw. No other objections have been received. The application appears to conform to the intent of the official plan and is consistent with the PPS, and staff are recommending approval.
All right, committee members, any comments or questions? All right. Do we know the intended use, Kirsten?
I do not believe that the owner has intended to do anything with the property at this point. If they were doing any development, obviously we would implement site plan control and we would ensure that any development on those lot addition lands was in conformity with the recommendations of the environmental impact study.
Thank you. Sam, are there any hands raised?
They're not, but I did, actually, as I say that, I do see a hand raised. So I believe this is the representative. So I will allow them into the meeting now. As a reminder, please have your video on and your microphone unmuted, and please confirm your name and mailing address before you begin speaking. So I've moved them in now.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It's Ted Williams here, and unfortunately for me, and fortunately for you, I do not have a microphone. I do not have a video camera, so you'll have to listen to my dulcet tones.
Okay, wonderful.
So I don't have a lot to add to this. I would just like to highlight that the objections, one was concerned about site plan control, and the other was concerned about development on the property. And really both of those concerns will be dealt with should there be any future development on this property. Just to give you a little bit of background here, the Isaacs purchased their property in 2016 on the lake, and then in 2018 this land became available in the back and they bought it for privacy reasons. They haven't really used the property, and by splitting it they can have maintain their privacy, which is what their goal was originally. and the other lot becomes a saleable lot. And actually, one of the neighbors has been talking to them about perhaps purchasing it for privacy. So that's sort of where the intent is going on this. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. All right, committee members, any comments or questions? All right, then I'll read the motion. Moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment approve consent application B52 2020 HTE for a lot addition, conditional on a registrable description of the severed lot being submitted to the Secretary Treasurer, including all rights of ways and easements, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The owner's taxes being in good standing. A site inspection fee of $235 being paid to the town of Huntsville. A consent finalization fee in the amount of $180 being paid to the town of Huntsville. The owner entering into and registering on title an agreement pursuant to section 5126 of the Planning Act requiring the recommendations and conclusions of the scoped environmental impact assessment prepared by Fry Corp Ecological Services to be implemented through site plan control. An undertaking being provided from a solicitor acting for the parties indicating that the severed lands and the abutting property, lot 153, plan M444, Stisted, will be consolidated into one PIN under the land titles system. And the severed lands are to join in title to the lands to which they are being added, section 53 or 5 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended, applies to any subsequent conveyance or transaction in relation to the land subject to this consent. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Wow. Well, thank you, Kirsten. That was a long meeting. So finally, moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Brandon Stapleton, it is resolved that we do now adjourn at 11:13 without a bathroom break. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, everybody. That was a big one.